Hello and welcome back to my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Prologue Part 1, When He Awakened. It felt like any other day. The heavy rain still persisted, it hadn't changed in the past week. There was nothing remarkable, nothing important. Overall a very forgettable day. One that some would rather forget altogether. Yet the city did not stop, the city would not stop. The streets were consistently busy, with the hustle and bustle of people, going to and from the various places in the city. The sun managed to shine through the thinning clouds, letting the morning rays rouse the people, where busy parents and annoying siblings would pick up the sleepy stragglers, from their restful respite from their everyday lives. Many would feel rather dismayed, reflecting the feel of the weather, yet one gentle soul always managed to make everything seem brighter. The Kurosaki household. Masaki Kurosaki, matriarch of the Kurosaki household and one of the few Quincy alive, was eating breakfast with her beloved family. Her 9-year-old son, Ichigo, was playing with his younger twin sisters, Karen and Yuzu, as was the way of children their age. Her husband, the former Shinigami captain, Isshin Shiba Kurosaki, joined in their festivities, making the mood all the more infectious. This is what she always desired. This is what made her content. A peaceful life and a joyous family. But deep down, she was wary of her own son. She will always love her child, but in the far reaches of the back of her mind, she was ever cautious. When he was born, she no longer felt that hollow that infected her years ago. She had her suspicions, but prayed she was wrong. Ichigo's inner world. An entire city, standing on its side, was bathed in a magnificent radiance, which was the utter opposite of the world outside. A middle-aged man in a black tattered overcoat, ever caught in a non-existent wind, was trying to enjoy the beautiful day. But there was something plaguing his mind, which he just couldn't push aside. A weird feeling, one that still connected him to the Quincy King. "You don't seem to be enjoying this as much as you usually do," spoke a warped voice. The man turned to see his lone companion in the empty world. A tall and lean man, white as bleached bones, wearing a mask as black as night. A skull, with two parallel lines going down the mask, which was fixed in a constant feral grin. "Don't you like these bright sunny days?" the pale man teased. "Have you grown tired of them? Or is there something else? Some persistent nagging reason that's making you question your stance?" "There is nothing to question," the old man said, calm but firm. "He is safe. That is all that matters." "Yeah, for now. What about when that changes?" The same argument bubbled to the surface once again. Whether to keep their charge innocent and ignorant, for as long as they could by restricting his power, or expose his potential and make him prepared for anything. The old man wanted to keep Ichigo out of harm's way, the skull-faced figure wanted Ichigo to prepare. To keep him from fighting, or make him the strongest fighter. They had fought over this, time and time again. "I refuse to allow Ichigo into that world," the elder said. "He's too young. And when he's older? What are you going to say? He's too gentle. Face it, I'm here and that kid will love fighting." The two glared at each other for a time. "We'll leave this matter to his mother." The old man sounded like he was trying to convince himself, more than his other half. He knew that old tale was a destined prophecy, and today was one of the special dates for that man's return. "You really think that Bstrd will let her live?" the pale man said. The elder froze in shock. He didn't think that the Zanpakuto knew the prophecy of the Quincy King's return. He never spoke of it, even blocked it from their connection, so how did he know it? "Because we're still technically one being, dumb butt." The hollow was smarter than he gave it credit for. He should be able to recognize Ichigo's potential. The Quincy half argued. He wouldn't do anything that might harm him. "Please, when has he shown any form of kindness or care?" The hollow Zanpakuto hybrid argued. "If it isn't a pure Quincy, or useful to him, he'll kill it because of that taint." Being the instincts did have its perks. He recognized the threat and would be prepared for it. Unfortunately, he had to share this world with someone less than agreeable and wanted to hide Ichigo away. Enough. The Quincy growled. This isn't for us to decide. He said before disappearing, not wanting to continue this conversation, or give himself reason to believe that he might be wrong. The sword spirit was left alone with his thoughts. A part of him was wishing that the Quincy half was right, because if he wasn't, today was going to be terrible. Hours later, after Ichigo's karate class, the rain became heavy again and the river banks and aqueducts swelled with the rushing water. The auburn-haired Quincy and her young child were making their way home in the heavy shower. He was such a sweet child. Ever since his father told him what his name meant, he tried so hard to get stronger, to protect her. He had so much potential, so much power, but he was still just a child. She didn't want him to start training. She didn't want him to end up in that world. That world of struggle and bloodshed, fighting with his life on the line. He was a flashing bright beacon to those empty monsters, the hollows, the ones that would love nothing more than to devour him and all his race. She would do anything to protect her little boy, to keep him away from that horrid place. She felt her son's tiny hand slip out of his grasp. She saw him running toward a girl, a spirit. His was one of the clearest sights ever. He never was able to tell living from the dead. She began to chase him, to keep him from getting washed away into the current. That's when she felt it. A dark oppressive hunger aimed right at her son. She turned to see a large hollow heading for her son. He was covered in wet, brown fur, and a large mask, with what seemed to be a fishing lure sticking out of his head. She needed to hurry to protect her child. She skated on a flow of racier to get between the disgusting creature and her son. Gathered the energy to generate her spirit bow. Then she was surrounded in a flash of light. She felt her power being ripped out of her, leaving her defenseless. Her only thought, save him. Ichigo's inner world. That bstrd. The hollow half yelled, somehow knowing this was going to happen. Masaki was made powerless and, in just a scant few seconds, will be dead. The Quincy half just stared, meaning his own inaction that had led to this. Deep down he knew the hollow was right. Yhwach would never allow Masaki to live anymore. With her dead, this world would flood, Ichigo would be defenseless. He tried to not care, concerning himself only with Ichigo, but if this happened, then Ichigo would suffer. Most likely for years, blaming himself for this. He was a fool. Protecting Ichigo didn't mean keeping him hidden. He was weak and vulnerable now. Old man. The hollow yelled. It's now or never. Are we just going to let this happen? Or are we going to do something? Save his mother and set the boy on the path of bloodshed, or leave him be and let him get consumed by sorrow. The Quincy half of Ichigo knew his decision. He just prayed he wouldn't regret it. Fine, he declared, letting his energy charge. Ichigo will walk a road of battle. The hollow grinned under his mask. Finally, Ichigo will be prepared for what was coming. Then by our name, his power, we shall protect him and his happiness. He charged his own energy. At once, they unleashed their combined energy, took control of Ichigo's body, and uttered one word. Everything around Ichigo was consumed in light. Zangetsu. Prologue Part 2, Answers and Teachers. Darkness. That all he could see around him. Memories flashing like lightning all around him. All in that endless expanse of nothingness. He heard screams of terror and sickening crunches with each new image, each new nightmare. Places he's never been, people he's never met, all playing out in what was possible final moments before whatever happened. In all this, he remembered fear, he felt terror, but most of all, he was hungry. He was hungry and was devouring these people with cold and calculated plans before indulging his hunger. That was, until she appeared. He saw her, an adult woman standing between him and a new morsel. In her hands was a glowing blue bow and arrow, notched and targeted for his skull. But then she was engulfed in a light and she staggered, Her threat was now diminished and he could feed. Then another flash came, a name was called out that he knew was spoken. But he did not hear it. The darkness returned and he heard only one thing. Protect. Ichigo's inner world. He finally opened his eyes, freeing himself from that nightmare of death and hunger, and beheld the odd world around him. Buildings stretching out to the endless sky ahead. An entire world, twisted on its axis. A part of him knew he should be scared, felt that he should be terrified, but he couldn't help but relax in a strange sense of familiarity in this place. The young hybrid child stared into the strange blue world in wonder and awe. Where? Ichigo began, where am I? Well, that's certainly $1 million question there, King. He heard a strange voice speak. Ichigo turned to see a tall figure, all white in some weird robes and a black skull mask on his face. Where are you? What is this place? What happened to mommy? He said mockingly before swinging his arms out to gesture all around them. In short order, you're in your head, this is your inner world, and mommy. He got close to Ichigo and whispered in his ear. She's gone. The second those words registered in Ichigo's mind, it began to pour. DMN, Zangetsu thought to himself, the old man is gonna beach at me a lot for this. But we did agree to let me handle this. He pulled away and gazed into the black clouds, pouring down Ichigo's sorrow. The king is going to hate me for doing this, but no one begins this kind of journey on a happy note. He looked back down at his future wielder and saw a face locked in despair. This happened, because you were weak. He stated, cold and harsh, to the young boy. Powerless. How can you protect anyone when you can't even protect yourself? The world began to flood. Ichigo was slipping deeper and deeper into his sorrow. Mom, no. Ichigo said as the memories returned. Those visions were that of a monster that was devouring people. And its latest victim, was his mother. How couldn't he recognize his own mother? Now she was gone because of him. Mom. He was talking through his tears, mixing in the continuous downpour. Mom, I'm sorry. Please, don't leave me. He could barely choke out the words. Please don't die. He wailed out before crying. Zangetsu watched the crying child in front of him. In a way, he was disgusted with his wielder, soft, weak, vulnerable. But he knew, in time he would be a force to fear, a force to reckon, a being of great power. Now was the time to plant the seeds for that warrior. Time, to set Ichigo on that path. She's not dying. He said, loud and firm enough that it reached Ichigo. Right into the young boy's core. The rains eased up considerably, but there was still quite the downpour. Not yet anyway. I said she was gone, taken from you. With that the rain got weaker and weaker, and Zangetsu saw a light of hope return in his master's eyes. She can be brought back, but what are going to do? He asked the child. Ichigo looked at the pale man in confusion. How are you going to stop this from happening again? He clarified. Are you going to stay that weakling that cries every time he loses? Or are you going to stand up and fight for what you want? A deep clear voice echoed behind the boy. He turned to see an old man with a shadowed beard and tattered cloak standing behind him. This was the time, there would be no going back. Ichigo finally developed a thing that was missing for so long. Will, determination, resolve. The two halves watched their charge as he whispered the words they were looking for. He just needed one more push. Speak up. Are you going to fight or hide? Are you going to stand up or fall down? Run and you will die. Hesitate and you will die. The road ahead is clear. They spoke in unison. Now chose. Ichigo brought his head up, set in a deep scowl of focus and resolution before crying out. I will become strong. When he yelled that, the force of his cry broke the clouds apart and cleared away every drop of rain. The sun returned, shining stronger than either spirit had ever felt. It was more than happiness, it was determination. The two powers smirked, looking down at the boy. Now he will push himself to become the strongest he could ever be. That's the spirit, Ichigo. The pale blade said as he gave his master a pat on his shoulder. Never forget this feeling. This will push you to become strong. Strong enough to protect everything precious to you. This motivation will be your greatest asset. The darker sword told him. The time is coming for you to wake up, he said as he felt the world outside shifting. Just remember. Ask your parents these questions. The hollow said, counting off on his fingers. What's a Shinigami, what's a Quincy, what's a hollow, and what am I, because you have more potential than all three. And don't forget to demand training. The world around Ichigo began to glow brighter and brighter as Ichigo felt himself leaving this world. Wait! He cried out. Aji-chan. Oni-san. What are your names? The two spirits smirked and spoke, but no words came out. Before much longer, Ichigo was gone from his inner world. With Isshin, before Grandfisher's attack. He sat on that couch, a cooling cup of coffee in his grasp, as he waited for his wife and son to return. He had started a small habit of play fighting with his son ever since Ichigo started doing karate. Never too serious, never too strong, also praising his little warrior for his reasons to become stronger. Ichigo was surprisingly calm for a member of the Shiba clan, but the moment his child was born he knew two things. 1, he was going to be an embarrassing dad to every girl his son brings, and 2, that his son was going to be a very powerful individual. His only aim with his son was to make sure he grew up a good man. If Ichigo ended up becoming a Shinigami or Quincy, he would do everything to support that boy, to protect him. Especially from creepy scientists that are more threatening than they look. Come on, Isshin, the man across from him whined, aren't you the least bit curious about what your boy can be? Kisuke Urahara, a more brilliant man doesn't exist. Banished under false charges against him by a scheming madman, he contents himself with that candy shop and secretly catering to the spiritual beings that can find his services. He had saved Masaki's life from hollowification after she got infected when they first met, and he explained that the same hollow now resides in their son. Ichigo's lineage was a kind many could only dream of, all three primary spiritual kinds all residing in one body. Kisuke was beyond curious to study and analyze such a being, but had enough respect for Isshin and his family to keep their boundaries. So he tried to get permission from Isshin in order to proceed. He does not intend harm, just curiosity, and above all preparation. Ichigo was currently a huge unknown, and he does not like unknown. If anything happened, he wanted to be ready. Over 900 countermeasures were in place for the boy, which was still too few in his opinion. A bright flash of light shined through the house suddenly, shocking the two men. It didn't take long for them to notice that two Ryatsu seemed to completely disappear, but only one mattered to Isshin. Masaki. He realized as the light began to disappear. Urahara and Isshin scrambled out the door and began to make their way to the mother and child. The second they got out the door, Urahara grabbed the former clan head and began to use his Shunpa to accelerate their progress. It was situations like these that made Isshin curse the Kido that was used to suppress that hollow at the expense of his own powers. Before their final leap they heard a loud voice cry out. Zangetsu. This actually gave them pause. In the briefest of instants, they felt a near overwhelming power. They finished their jumps to nothing more than an unconscious mother laying protectively over her dear child. Ichigo. Masaki. The former captain cried out, his companion following closely behind. After a quick examination of the two, he was slightly relieved to find that both were still alive. This is bad, Isshin. Urahara exclaimed. Masaki has been completely drained of her Ryatsu. If we don't get some back into her, she'll die. Can we use yours? No, she need Quincy Ratio. We have to get her to Ishida. There was no argument, not even a single line of speech as the two former captains rushed to Karakura Hospital. The workplace of the last pure-blooded Quincy family in the city. Karakura Hospital. The room was filled with various people, the kind that takes notice to an even like this. A disturbance in the air unlike any felt before. 3 people occupying hospital's beds, asleep and unmoving. 2 women, 2 mothers, 2 impure quincies hooked to silver canisters leaking a glowing blue liquid down into their veins. One with hair like a glowing midday sun while the other had hair as dark as night. Masaki Kurosaki and Kane Katajiri, the wife of the man supplying the Raisure IVs. With them were 2 white-haired men, a father and son, Ryuken and Soken Ishida, in a white suit and the other in robes. A dark-skinned woman with dark purple hair and golden cat-like eyes in black spandex and an orange shirt. A more tanned man with a braided ponytail and a thick mustache wearing an apron and opaque glasses. And finally, the duo that brought them all together. "Alright Tessai, this should do it," Urahara said to his burly assistant from the store and old friend. A mix of medical science and restorative Kido, and the 2 quincies were in no more danger of dying, to the ecstatic relief of both husbands. They were still in comas, but they would eventually recover in time. "It's good we acted in time, boss," the large man said as they finished up the final touches. Masaki was indeed in critical condition. His Majesty either deeply craved her power, or was disgusted with the thought of a quincy that was infected with a hollow. Mused Soken, a rare angered scowl laying on his normally kindly features. He himself did not choose to put much stock in that old tale, choosing to be a proactive force for coexistence between the surviving quincies and the Shinigami. He wholeheartedly supported the death gods when they massacred his own kind. Any atrocity committed as a hollow could be forgiven as those are being who have lost themselves, and quincies destroyed them from existence with no remorse which threatened that balance of the world. This act, this cleansing was utter foolishness, and he cursed the quincy blood that binds him to that accursed parasite Bach, the king of the quincy. "This is just great," the dark-skinned woman groaned. Things were bad enough with whatever Aizen is scheming, now Yuha Bach is returning as well. This could throw all the worlds into turmoil. Maybe, but not yet Yoruchi. Urahara placated his old friend and former captain. Soken did tell us the prophecy of his return. The sealed king of the quincy. Over 900 years, he shall recover his heartbeat. Over 90 years, he shall recover his intellect. Over 9 years, he shall recover his power. And over 9 days, he shall recover the world. Spoke a voice. Exactly. We still have a few years to prepare for him, while still getting ready for Aizen. Urahara then noticed that not one of the adults said anything. They all turned to the now awake Ichigo, who spoke the king's hymn foretelling the return of Bach. "Ichigo, where did you hear that?" The boy's father asked him, more serious than he had ever been with his boy. "How long have you been awake?" Before Isshin got any answers, his son gave his own questions. "Dad, what are hollows?" The question from the little boy surprised everyone in that room. "Well, Ichigo. Hollows are dash. What are Shinigami?" He asked again, throwing Isshin off again. "Which do you dash? What are quincies?" "One at a time Ichi dash." "Dad, what am I?" Isshin froze at that last one. He immediately left his sleeping wife's side and embraced his son. Securely, protectively, lovingly. "You are my son," he told his child, rubbing his back to soothe him. "There is nothing that anyone can do to change that." He gave his son another squeeze before pulling back and looking him in the eye. "Now, where did you hear those words?" "From these 2 guys in my inner world," the child said, confirming Urahara's suspicions of the boy being in his world. "This old guy also told me to recite that thing I said when I woke up. Said it was important." At that moment, Ichigo looked around the room and saw everyone. "Who are they?" They took the time to make introductions and proceeded with explanations. Hollows were empty beings, lost to despair and hate that devour other souls and beings with greater amounts of spirit energy. Shinigami were guides to the afterlife and guardians of the dead, purifying hollows and delivering lost souls to their rest. Quincy's were humans that could manipulate Raisher to completely destroy hollows, but because they threatened the balance they were practically wiped out, leaving only so many to live in peace. So why should I have more potential than all them? Urahara decided it was his turn now. Because Ichigo, you are a mix of all three. He told the child. Truly a miracle of grand coincidence. Your mother is a Quincy, a rather powerful one at that was bitten and infected with hollow Raisher. Then a Shinigami saved her life by using his powers to seal that hollow away. Care to guess who that Shinigami was? The shopkeeper asked the boy. It took Ichigo just a scant few seconds to recognize the answer. Dad! You're a Shinigami. Isshin smiled down at his son. Was, Ichigo. I retired to become your dad. He said, ruffling his boy's hair. Then Ichigo said something that surprised everyone. I want to become strong, Dad. He declared. I want to learn all I can do. All the powers I can use. I want to be able to protect Mommy and Karen and Yuzu. He got that same determined look in his eyes when he declared his desire for strength to his powers. Isshin recognized that look, and he knew that he would cave. Luckily, he wasn't alone. Then, if you don't mind, you can begin this weekend with my grandson to study the Quincy arts. The kindly old man said with a smile. Taking on this burden while his son got his own feelings back together. Whether to continue the Quincy ways, or turn his back on it completely. I can teach the boy Kido. Tessai said. He might make the spells even stronger. Hey, Yoruichi interjected. No way can he just learn spells and long range. He's got to learn how to fight up close and personal. She got in front of the small child and pointed down at him with a disturbing feral grin. Got that? You call me sensei or ne-sama, because I'm teaching you how to fight. Ichigo was excited by the dark-skinned woman's enthusiasm, but was also a little scared. Oh okay, he stuttered while clinging to his father, Yoruichi ne-chan. Yoruichi just stared at the little kid and felt a bane to her existence. Cuteness. So, while Ichigo gets over his new trauma, who teaches him swordplay? Urahara asked Isshin. It was difficult to say who was the better warrior of the two when it came to Zenjutsu. When Ichigo gets a Zanpakuto, we'll test him and see. Isshin said. He looked down at his smiling son and knew that Ichigo just decided to give up a normal childhood. No, more like, it was taken from him. This was going to be a difficult road for Ichigo, he might never have normal friends, I hope you two are going to be ready. When he grows up, you may not stand a chance. Ichigo's training began soon after that. Prologue Finale, Bonds of Friendship. Yuryu, the Holy Archer. A couple months had passed since that night in the hospital. A couple months since Ichigo learned the truth and began his training. A couple months since the young cousins first met each other. One dressed in the normal Quincy attire of white and blue while the other wore red and black with small metal crosses on their wrists of likewise color. Both running through the forest in the bright sunlight, giggling in their childlike innocence as they raced to meet up with their elderly teacher. Yuryu still remembered that day with crystal clarity. The day he met his cousin. Flashback, the weekend after the holy selection. A young Yuryu Ishida waited eagerly for his teacher and grandfather to arrive for his next day of lessons. After his mother went into that coma, his family needed a few days to recover. He went to see her with his father not too long after to see for himself. He did not know why or what was the rhyme or the reason. He just knew that his mother was sleeping a dreamless sleep that few ever wake up from. His grandfather told him that they would continue training during the weekend and that Yuryu would not be alone this time. Minutes slowly passed as he noticed his grandfather finally coming into the sacred training grounds of their kind, with a small orange-haired boy roughly his age following him. In his excitement, the young Quincy ran out to meet his kin. "Grandpa!" he exclaimed in nervous excitement. "Is he?" the boy asked the wise elder. The old man smiled down at his young student and calmly introduced the young Ichigo to his relative. Yes, Yuryu, he is my new student. He gently spoke to the child. Yuryu, say hello to your cousin. Ichigo Kurosaki. That was all Ichigo needed to gather his confidence and met his cousin in full. Hi. The young strawberry said with a smile. I'm Ichigo. The cheer was infectious as the raven-haired Quincy returned his smile. I'm Yuryu Ishida. Pleased to meet you. Flashback end. Months passed since that meeting. Ichigo had a lot of trouble with the fine control of Raisher that the Quincy abilities demanded. It was theorized that being part hollow contributed to this issue as they were naturally chaotic beings. The regular Quincy cross needed to be modified just so he could use them as they crumbled in response to the hollow Ryatsu, evidenced by the black and red as opposed to the silver and blue of the normal cross. The two skills he actually managed to excel at was the speed and defense skills, Hirenkyaku and Blood Vene. It was almost natural for Ichigo to use the speed techniques while his talent for Blood seemed to be inherited from his mother. While Yuryu was initially jealous of his novice cousin, he soon got over it as Ichigo still failed with maintaining a Quincy bow. Now they were heading for the training grounds together, skating on a cushion of Raisher as they practiced their Hirenkyaku, and laughing the whole way. You're getting faster, Yuryu. Complimented Ichigo. Maybe someday you'll move as fast as me. A little banter of a friendly rivalry, pushing the other to succeed. And maybe someday, you'll be able to use a bow. Retorted Yuryu. But I'm betting you won't hit anything. That was mean. Laughed the children, all the way to the front feld their teacher showed them. But the laughter was short-lived. Until Ichigo grew more accustomed to using Raisher and manipulating that energy, they kept him of hard combat teaching, even his hollow Zangetsu let only the timely necessary techniques awaken in the boy. One of which was the sensory technique Pesquisa, letting him sense nearby, strong, Raisher signatures. A way of practicing his focus, finding his teaching, reassuring himself, keeping the young boy happy. Until he felt a dozen dark, chaotic, hungry, energies. A feeling he was all too familiar with because he was carrying the same type of energy in his soul. Those dozens of hollows weren't what froze him in place though, it was who they surrounded. Hey! Yuryu said, noticing his cousin stopped and his terrified look. Everything all right? Ichigo responded by grabbing his cousin's hand and rushing as fast as he could to the meeting place, telling Yuryu of the dangers that are closing in on their teacher. As fast as he could, awakening a fragment of his Sonido and adding it to his Hirenkyaku made them reach their sensei faster than ever before. But it was a fruitless endeavor in the end. Soken Ishida was already slain by hollows, the Shinigami showing up too late. A couple of days later. It was a dark day, an overcast sky thick with heavy clouds, like the heavens themselves tried to hold back their tears. Both the Ishidas and the Kurosakis were in attendance, Soken having found his way into all their hearts as the kindly grandfather he always was. Ryukin let nothing show, same as Isshin, both fathers trying to be a pillar of strength and support for their families. With them were Urahara's group as they were fellow instructors with Soken, trying to teach the boy that would one day become a beacon of hope and progress, trying to now console children with their loss. Ichigo took it hard, his cousin had it worse. Not too close with his father, his mother falling into a coma, and now losing his grandfather, the poor child was close to breaking, with only his cousin to sympathize with. The funeral ended and everyone began to go home. Ichigo and his father helping a crying Yuzu and Karen, while Yuryu sat in silence with his father, staring blankly at the ground. Ryukin had chosen to cast away his Quincy bloodline in favor of dealing with the matters of the living while the dead dealt with the dead. These decisions left a harsh gap between himself and his child. He chose to save the living after everything that he had lost. He knew his stance but he was still a father, and if there was one thing Ryukin learned from his own it was, a father will do anything for his child. As those words replayed in his head as he watched his child stare blankly ahead, he knew what had to be done. Yuryu. He spoke calmly but firmly, ever stuck in his business mode. His child responded upon hearing his name and looked at his father. Do you remember why I said I don't like the Quincy? Yuryu's face fell at the return of the conversation that pushed them apart to begin with. Yes, Yuryu mumbled out. Because there was no money in it. Those words painted Yuryu's opinion of his father as a man that cared for nothing but the paper in his pockets. Precisely. As a Quincy, I would not be able to support you. He said, shocking Yuryu as this new information came in. As a Quincy I could not keep your mother alive. As a Quincy I would be unable to help people that needed it more than lost souls. As a Quincy, you would not exist. Yuryu stared at his father, seeing him in a new light for the first time in a long time. I was once like you, Yuryu. I cared about the Quincy bloodlines, I wanted to preserve the heritage of our kind. But because of that same heritage and ancestry I began to lose things. The biggest loss because I was a Quincy. I almost lost your mother. Again Yuryu was frozen in shock, his own kind almost killed his mother. I abandoned my Quincy heritage because that was a life strife with pain and loss for me, I wanted you to avoid that. Ryukin continued. However, I should have realized that you are your own person, and your experiences may not be the same. You will have your own path to walk and your own life to lead. Ryukin faced his child, seeing a phantom of his younger self in the boy. Ichigo is trying to become stronger to face a terrible monster. One that will destroy everything. That is his reason to get stronger. What is yours? Yuryu was about to respond with his usual answer, to prove the worth of the Quincy's, before remembering what his father had just told him. What you were going to say was your grandfather's goal. I'm asking why you want a power. Why do I want power? Yuryu asked himself. Memories of seeing his cousin try so hard to master the Quincy techniques, his laughter as they play trained with each other, their happy smiles as they pushed each other to the next level. It didn't take him much longer to find his answer. I want to help Ichigo. He told his father, making him give a rare smile to his son. I still do not approve of the Quincy Yuryu. He said, leaning back into his chair as his son looked at his father in disbelief. That is why, if you want me to train you and Ichigo, I want to see you both in the top 10% of your classes. He challenged his son. Make sure you have a plan for the future when the fights are over. Yuryu felt a smile return to his face and he agreed to his father's demands. And son. Your grandfather was gentle with you too. Yuryu felt his dad gain a more malicious aura. I will not be. It took Yuryu a few seconds to recover his courage. Bring it on, Dad. He challenged his father. You are spending too much time with that boy. Ryukin thought to himself. You're becoming more confident and excited. Not necessarily a bad thing though. Oriheim, the Flower Princess. 3 years later, the Kurosaki Clinic. An older Ichigo sat across from his teachers. The big and burly Tensai and the disheveled shaggy Urahara. The boy was deep in meditation, focusing on gathering his energy to manipulate his Kido. Ryukin kept his word, Ichigo was much better at controlling Reisher and it was a rough few years. The cousins became closer to each other in skill, but Yuryu still was leagues above as he didn't have as many things to learn. Now Ichigo was training in undoing Bakudo Kido spells, currently restrained by 6 rods of pale light. This training was meant to increase his skill in proficient Kido use, lest they blow a hole in the training room under Urahara's shop. Again. His development is rather astounding. The ex-captain thought to himself. If he was solely focusing on one skill alone, he could give experienced opponents a difficult time. Ichigo had progressed in ways that took others decades to achieve in a scant few years. The biggest problems was Ichigo's growing strength, the hollow inside wanting to do more destructive activities. However, until Ichigo becomes a Shinigami, they've decided to take their time with control and DSPLN. Urahara was honestly afraid of what the boy would end up becoming, a nigh unstoppable force of nature. Tensai merely watched as his pupil impressed him more and more. Scarcely 5 minutes had passed before the boy undid the level 61 Bakudo spell. Even without the chant, that spell was not easy to undo for a trainee. Their musings were cut short as there was a loud knocking at the door. Urahara chose to answer the door as Ichigo was becoming tired from undoing the seal. When he opened the door, he was greeted by a horrific sight. A young girl, roughly Ichigo's age, was standing in the doorway. Tears streaming down her terrified face, her hair and her clothing was soaked in blood. All of which, came from the unconscious man she carried on her back. "Please." The girl with the burnt orange hair pleaded. "Please, you have to save my brother." Just from a glance he could tell that the young man did not have much longer. If he and Tessai weren't here, this person would be a goner. Good thing he was here. "Tessai." The shopkeeper called out. His assistant was paying rapt attention and jumped into motion. He gently took the man from his little sister and the exiles made their way into Clinic Station. "Ichigo, take care of the girl," Urahara said just before leaving the children alone. "Come on," Ichigo said taking the girl by the hand, "let's get you a bath." Blood stopped bothering the boy as his life progressed and his training became more and more tense. Once having his arm completely shattered by Yoruchi in an accident and recovering just as quickly because of his regenerative powers. He grew curious enough to test those limits until the sight of blood was almost normal to him, then everyone scolded him for his recklessness. "My dad and sisters are visiting my mom in the hospital," he explained as he led the girl deeper into his house. "I'll try to find something that'll fit you." Okay. She mumbled out, halfway between worrying for her brother and feeling guilty for possibly causing this. "With the men. I think I'm stumped here, Tessai," Urahara painfully admitted to his old friend. "Fractured spine, ruptured organs, fewer bones that aren't broken, I just can't figure this out." He scratched his head while the shaded man glared at his boss. Was he born under a lucky star because we're here or an unlucky one because he got hit? "Can the jokes wait?" yelled Tessai. "At least until after he's in no immediate danger." Yeah, the shopkeeper said, casually waving his fan. "The question is, do we do this fast or slow?" They both looked at each other, considering their options while Tessai used healing Kido to slowly stabilize the injured brother. "Slow." They agreed after that moment of thought. "I don't think it's safe for you to use your Bankai here. Plus I don't want my dear Beneheim-chan to be mad at me." Kisuke whined, hugging the cane which housed his Zanpakuto. Back with the kids. Orihime sat on the couch in the living room, wearing a red t-shirt and brown shorts that Ichigo had given her. In her hand were the 2 blue hairpins that her brother got her. "I don't want something so childish," she heard her own words echo in her head. She knew how hard her brother worked for their sake, how much effort he put into making her smile, and she just stomped all over that love and generosity over something so stupid. She felt her tears welling up in her eyes again, scared that her brother might die and her last words would be something so hurtful. "Here." She heard the boy say, knocking her out of her delirium. "It's probably not any good but I made tea." He handed her a cup, which she graciously accepted with a tired smile. "So, what were you crying about now?" Ichigo asked bluntly. She just stared at the strawberry, thinking about her troubles. "I'm a terrible sister," she finally said, looking sullenly into her tea. "I yelled at him for getting me something I thought was for kids." She saw no harm in telling him, he might give her the punishment she needed to get heaven to spare her brother. She showed him the 6-petaled azure pins that her brother bought for her. "See? Childish aren't they? What's wrong with being childish?" he asked her. She looked at him in surprise as he gave her an innocent look, not even thinking for a second that she was a bad person. "My dad acts like a kid all the time, he does it to keep me and my sisters smiling." He then wrapped his hands around hers that held her hairpins. "As for your brother, I heard if you make a wish on something that's important to you then it'll come true," he said as he lied. He knew that with both Tessai and Urahara. Here then her brother was definitely going to recover. But there was never any harm in helping a girl not be happy, was there? Orihime looked at her hairpins with tears coming back to her, clutching them to her heart as she prayed with all her heart for her brother to recover. Good news. Urahara announced as they came out of the proto-operating room. He's stable enough to be transported to the hospital. Orihime's eyes widened in astonishment as the wish seemed to work. She looked at Ichigo, who smiled at her. See? She immediately embraced him while crying tears of relief. The ambulance came by not too long after that to take the Inoue siblings to Karakura Hospital, where Ryukin himself would handle the rest. And there, he said as he finished putting the pins in her hair. That's better. And looks cute too. Orihime grew a massive blush as she began to develop a crush for the boy. The paramedic said it was time to go. She shyly mumbled, my name is Orihime Inoue. What's yours? It's Ichigo. He responded cheerfully. Remember to smile, Orihime. He told her as they left to help her brother, Sora, recover from his accident. Tatsuki, the fiery fighter. 1 year later, the karate dojo. Hey Ichigo. The now teenage Ichigo heard his old sparring partner call him out. You wanna have another spar? It was an early day at the dojo. The instructors were busy with other matters, people recovering from the stress of the entrance exams for their schools, but 2 particular students did not feel ready to call it quits for the day. Sure, I've got the time. He told Tatsuki. The only training he had today was in Hakuda, the Shinigami hand-to-hand style, with Yoruchi and swordplay with his father. He figured he had enough time to warm up with his old friend before going back to the hell that was his dark-skinned mentor's training. First to 5 wins. She said in excitement, pounding her padded knuckles together. Tatsuki, she never stopped being the best karate student in the dojo, and Ichigo was always her best sparring partner. He never once thought of her as weak or anything lesser because of her gender. He used to give her the best challenge out of anyone there, but for a long while she felt something was off. She never once lost to Ichigo, but the fights had changed rather sporadically. Sometimes she won fairly quickly and other times it took a while, sometimes with ease and sometimes with a lot of effort. Ready? Her partner asked as he got into his stance. He became much more confident in the course of his training. He stopped being so shy and never cried after losing again. At first Tatsuki was glad, no longer needing to protect her friend from bullies as he could defend himself. She saw so herself. Ready. She responded as they began to search for an opening in the other's defense. She remembered that day rather well, a mere few weeks ago. He was being ganged up on again because some idiots had issues with his hair, some with knives, some with clubs. She hated people like that, people that mock or ostracize someone just because of one minor difference. She thought it was stupid when she helped him with bullies because they thought he could see ghosts. Idiots. She threw the first punch, a clear blow aimed for his face. He blocked it easily and returned with a kick to her midsection which she managed to dodge. Moves that were barely reminiscent of how he single-handedly demolished those idiot thugs. He was faster than she'd ever seen him move, more graceful in his movements. In the same time they charged at her friend, it was over. That was when she finally realized that he wasn't fighting at his full strength against her. She couldn't confront him about without exposing him in the act or he'd deny it. She wanted the full truth and was determined to pry it out of him. The fight slowly dragged on, blocking punches, dodging kicks, getting ever so close to landing a strike on the other, both unaware of their audience member. Something's up with Tatsuki. He thought to himself. She's acting a lot more reserved than usual for our spars. He spared a quick glance to the clock and almost blanched. If this keeps up, I'm going to be late. He didn't know what she would do, but Ichigo never wanted to PSS off his martial arts instructor. He was going to have to go a little harder to finish this spar. He threw a feint at her face before throwing a jab at her stomach, getting first blood. Nice one, Ichigo. Tatsuki complimented, rubbing where she was hit. Okay, he has never hit me that hard before. He must be getting desperate. She thought as they got into their stances again. By the way, she said as they began the fight once more, I met this girl who seems to know you. Said to let you know her wish-granting hairpins are still working. Ichigo accidentally dropped his guard as a laugh escaped him, which she capitalized on with a kick to his side and gaining herself a point. A dirty move, but it was his fault for dropping his guard in a fight. Yeah, I remember her. He said as they prepared for the next round. Her brother was in a car accident and came to our clinic. They began the fight with more intensity than before, not enough to be completely serious but more than a normal person to consider. I told her that to make her feel better. How sweet. She cooed, kicking at his head. I think she's got a crush on you. She was about to get another hit in before he blocked and punched her in the side, scoring again. From there they stopped the banter, the fight escalating more and more, even they began to doubt whether it was a regular spar. Ichigo got a chop on her chest, she managed to kick his stomach and his head, then they tied with a simultaneous punch to each other's face. Tatsuki was panting and sweating heavily while Ichigo pretended to be out of breath. One more hit and it would be over, and he needed to get moving. He glanced at the clock, giving Tatsuki a window to slam him with one last strike. She threw her kick and he landed flat on his back, signifying his defeat yet again. It took him a couple seconds to realize that she purposefully missed him and he fell for it. So, wanna tell me why you aren't taking me seriously? She asked, glaring at him. Well, he said while feeling a sheen of cold sweat cover him, about that. I told him to not go all out unless necessary. Their spectator finally made herself known. The goddess of Flash Yoruchi was watching the fight from the sidelines and judging Tatsuki. Ichigo told her about his sparring partner and considered bringing her in under her wing. After all, he's strong enough to accidentally cripple someone. She said in a joking manner. Ichigo, who is this? Tatsuki asked the protector. Tatsuki could tell from her movements and posture that the woman before her was a master martial artist. Was he taking private lessons under this woman? This is Yoruchi Shihoin. Ichigo sighed. She is my Hakuda master. Hakuda? What's Hakuda? Hakuda is a close combat style that concentrates on rapid attacks to overwhelm one's opponent. The purple-haired master fighter explained. In order to achieve that, one must also be strong enough to move at such speeds. Here. She walked over to the punching bag in the room and struck it with enough force that it exploded from the back. Now Ichigo, how many times did I hit that? 3. Which was too many. He responded. Tatsuki was in shock. It hardly looked like the woman moved even once. She could have done that in one punch. She thought to herself in disbelief. And Ichigo has been training under this person? Why are you here anyway, Yoruchi? He asked his teacher, who smiled at her student. One that belied her anger and promised pain. Why? She was immediately in front of Ichigo, keeping that smile with a malicious aura around her. Why am I here, being so generous as to pick up my beloved student for an extra special training I made up with love and care for his well-being? Why would I come for my student? Ichigo was shaking as he finally realized something very important. What's the one rule I gave you, Ichigo? He was late for her training. I'm sorry, Yoruchi ne dash, he tried to hastily apologize. Unfortunately. Don't you, Yoruchi ne-chan, me. She was not too forgiving. That stopped working on me when you stopped being a cute little kid. She yelled as she ground her knuckles into the sides of his head, making him cry in pain. You kept growing up, scowling at everyone, you don't even react to me naked anymore. Wait, what? Tatsuki finally getting over the shock of the scene in front of her. But she was not going to get an answer soon. Now Yoruchi was hugging his face in her bountiful BRSTS while shaking back and forth. Now you're skipping classes to spend time with your girlfriend. She cried comically while Ichigo tried in vain to fight for life-giving oxygen. Give me back my cute little Ichigo. We're not dating. Tatsuki cried out, embarrassed with a blush that matched Ichigo's other namesake. This seemed to reach Yoruchi, and snap her out of her delirium. Oh, you're not. She dropped Ichigo unceremoniously onto the floor as he began to gasp for breath. Shame, you would have been a cute couple. Tatsuki only blushed harder. Well, no matter. You'll be spending a lot more time together anyways. What do you mean? Tatsuki made the mistake of asking. Yoruchi gave the aspiring martial artist her cat-like smile. Ichigo needs a proper sparring partner, and I've just decided to take you under my wing. The Flash Goddess told the young teen. You've got serious talent and I want to see that flourish. Do I get a say in this? She squeaked. Yoruchi's unchanging smile was all the answer she needed. Well, it would be nice getting trained personally by a master. Chad, the unbreakable shield. 1 month after. Ichigo didn't care about what people thought of him. He was proud of who he was, and he wasn't going to change that for anyone. The constant street punks coming to fight him just for his hair color did make him consider going black a few times, but beating in skulls was more fun than that. It would also be easier without the keto restraints that Yoruchi was forcing him to wear all the time, an idea he swears she got from that show about the spirit detective, but he'll digress. He was surrounded by thugs from other schools, looking to get payback on a few beatings he gave out earlier, and he was now only as strong as Tatsuki was before his kitty teacher got her paws on her. Enough for 5 but not enough for 8, at least he knows how to fight. Time to die, you punk. Some idiot with a mohawk yelled before he got blindsided by a brown giant punching him aside. He towered over the others wearing the same black school uniform Ichigo was in. Brown-skinned and wavy brown hair covering his eyes, it was his classmate Yasutora Sato. But he kept calling him Chad. He wasn't too sure what he was doing here, but he was glad for the help. It did not end well for the 8 attacking thugs. Man, that was a pain. Ichigo growled in annoyance. Thanks for the help, Chad. These jackasses were going to make me late. It's Sato, and no problem, Ichigo. The giant said as he left for home himself, rubbing the pendant on his neck and praying for his abuelo. Ichigo finally got back to Urahara's shop, where his teacher and partner were waiting for him. Just in time. Yoruchi said with a smile. You were almost late again. She sat on Tatsuki's back as she continued her light warm-up of 100 push-ups. She was already panting as she hit 50 and felt like dropping. Another group of idiots gang up on you again? Yeah, got some help this time though. He told her about Chad and how he helped him. Sounds like a good guy. Tatsuki grunted out as she reached 70. You need to pay him back for that. If I know those idiots, they'll try something. He said as he started his stretches. 1 week after that. Punch after punch slammed into him after these 2 cretins got him by the riverside. Not too much to really knock him down but enough to still hurt a bit. DMNU. The assailant growled, laughing as Chad just stood there and took it. Why don't you go down? The guy asked, throwing another punch to his face. This'll finish him. The guy behind him laughed as he got a large rock ready to bash his head in. Chad saw this and actually got worried. Then he saw a black blur come at him and kick that guy away with such force he went flying. He repeated this feat with the other guy but punched him in the stomach instead. Both of Chad's attackers were out cold. Ichigo just glared at the unconscious heaps of the 2 punks before scoffing. He pulled out his cell and called the hospital. I never leave a debt unpaid, man. This was for helping me out. He told his large acquaintance with a smile. Thanks. He responded in his deep voice. Hours passed as they laid on a hillside, Sato looking at his medallion with a sense of pride for keeping his promise. What I don't get is why you were just standing there, Chad. Ichigo finally said after. The silence started to bug him. Sato. The half-Mexican corrected him. Sato, Chad, whatever. Ichigo dismissed. The point is, you're lucky I showed up when I did. I know you're really strong, so why would you take that beating? Why didn't you fight back like when you helped me? He asked, fully aware of his teacher coming by in her black cat form. I made a promise that I would never use my fists for my own sake. Chad said as he sat up. Yoruchi finally got to her student, climbing on top of him and letting out a purr as he cautiously rubbed her soft fur. It's a vow I made to Abuelo. Isn't that Spanish for grandfather? He asked, needing a little clarification from the multilingual lessons his uncle Ryukin made him and Yuryu learn. Yes, it does. My abuelo's name was Oscar Joaquin de la Rosa. So, you told me you were from Okinawa, but you have Spanish roots? No, Mexican. I lived with my abuelo in Mexico after my parents in Okinawa died when I was little. He said, remembering how Oscar came to get him one day, how he tried so hard to make the young Sato go from a bad-tempered rotten kid to a good man. The day he finally took the old man's lessons to heart after he saved his young stupid self from some angry parents from the kids he beat up. When his grandfather gave him that medallion saying that his body and strength was a means to help people and that the coin will show him the way. So that medallion is a keepsake of your promise, huh? Ichigo asked while scratching his cat teacher's ears. Yeah, this thing's probably worth more than my life. He said, holding that gold coin to his heart. Ichigo noticed a phone at their feet that was open, probably on too. Well, I should get going. Ichigo said, repositioning Yoruchi to lay on his shoulders as he made his way back to the shop for his Kido practice. Chad watched as his friend walked away with that strange cat. Ichigo, you're good with cats. He thought to himself, despite feeling something was up with that feline. Those punks from before are going to try something tomorrow. He told his sensei as he walked. Maybe something with his coin. A good assumption, Ichigo. She said in her deep masculine voice she had as a cat. He's certainly determined if he wouldn't even fight back for his own sake. Is that all you're going to say about it? No, it's also stupid. Abusing your strength is unforgivable, but not defending yourself when you have to is being stupid, not selfish. She said before leaping off her student and walked on the nearby ledge next to him. Someone's going to have to knock some sense into his head if he's going to learn that though. Leave that to me, Yoruchi. He said, gaining a slight smirk. He's a good guy. I wanna help. Yoruchi grunted in approval of her student. He may not be that cute little kid anymore, but what took his place was a strong, kind-hearted young man. It was a bonus that he grew up handsome and CC too. Ichigo. Yeah. You realized you rubbed your teacher's pee-pee, right? She said with a devious smirk as she finally got Ichigo to stumble and turn redder than a strawberry again. You pervert. He yelled as she ran off. The next day. He was stupid. He let his guard down too much. Now here he was, tied up, under a bridge with the same guys from yesterday and a few others. Some idiot with glasses and dreads with a small chain piercing from his ear to his nose. This is the end for Sato, tough guy of middle school. He said in a smug tone, believing he's won. So, you scared now? You're not gonna start pissing yourself, are ya? I don't have to go at the moment. He calmly replied, getting under the guy's skin. I guess you aren't scary enough. Sorry guys. Hee hee, aw man. The guy said, getting up in front of Sato. Well then, in that case I'll just take this. He pulled Chad's medallion and broke the chain around his neck. Now what did you say? Something about this being worth more than your life. He brought out a pair of bolt cutters. Then if I take this away, you might as well be dead, right? Now Chad was scared to lose his medallion, scared to lose that gift from his abuelo, and furious at the man in front of him. Wanting nothing more than to beat that smug look off that jackass's face. So then die, loser. Chad strained against his binds, making them groan in resistance as he pulled with all his considerable strength. Don't be stupid. Give it dash, and that was all before 2 feet slammed into his face. You're pissing me off. Ichigo growled as he surfed the ground with the punk's body. Shut up. When the dust finally settled, he gave a cocky smirk to Chad and the guys around him. He grabbed Chad's coin from the unconscious leader's hands before rummaging through his pockets for a phone. Hey! Weasel! You alright? They called out of concern for their boss, knowing how hard Ichigo hits. You got a lot of nerve going through the boss's pockets like that. Ichigo ignored them as he pulled out the phone and dialed the hospital, asking for 5 ambulances right off the bat. Yoruichi was in her human form, watching her student pummel the crap out of a few idiots. She came because she was curious as to how Ichigo would handle this situation. Needless to say, she was a little disappointed in his form and movements. Too much unnecessary movement in her opinion. Chad was watching Ichigo and remembered his grandfather, taking blow after blow for his sake the first time he messed up so badly. Well, that's that. Ichigo said, not even winded from the fight. Hey Chad, I've been thinking. He started to untie his large friend from his binds. You can stay the same while I throw my punches for you. In return, you can throw your punches for me. He finally freed Chad from his binds as he looked at Ichigo with a sense of admiration he hasn't shown since his abuelo. If there's anything you protect with your life, I'll do the same. He said, reaching out his hand with Chad's medallion in his open palm. That also means fighting back when I'm not around. He said with a chuckle. I am being kept busy with a lot of things. Chad looked at his orange-haired savior, realizing the depth of that oath he just said. His grandfather was right, that coin would show him the meaning behind his strength, how he should use it. Sure. He said simply, before grasping Ichigo's hand and forming an iron-clad pact with him. He would give his life to help Ichigo, knowing he would do the same for him. He'd use his strength for others. Yoruichi smiled, proud of her disciple. Then she decided on something, appearing right next to the boys almost instantly. Ichigo! She yelled suddenly, shocking the two. I said I wanted you to do 1 lap around the city in 5 minutes. She never said that, she was using this to cement their oath. Instead I find you dawdling with your buddy from school. Give me 5 laps now. She screamed, in teacher mode, not giving Ichigo any chance to protest as he began running off to complete his task. Chad watched his friend run off, clearly scared of making the weird woman angry, before feeling himself get smacked in the back. You too big guy. What? He asked, confused. Yoruichi gave him a toothy grin. You just made a promise to help Ichigo no matter what, right? Chad nodded dumbly, still confused. Well, as his teacher I'm not letting you drag him down by being too weak to help him. She threw him a confidence-boosting thumbs up. So you better start, before you're too far behind. Chad finally understood that this woman was telling him Ichigo was constantly improving himself and he was going to keep his promise, he should do the same. He held up his coin before kissing it and putting it into his pocket, rushing off to join Ichigo in his challenges ahead. Ichigo became a death god. The beginning of the series proper. 'Twas a beautiful night. A silver glow washing over the city of Karakura. Few lights remain on in this dead hour of the night as it knows a rare moment of silence. An image of tranquility and stillness to the living, not so much for the spiritually aware and the dead themselves. Standing high above the city, like a guardian light in the darkness, was a warrior. Clad in a black shihakusho with an elegant blade on the hip, the Soul Reaper stood watch as several monsters slipped into the city. I sense strong spirit energy close by, she said before rushing off into the darkness. Unaware of who she will meet, and what will happen. Evening the next day. The day was on its decline, the sky releasing a burning bronze light over the city while everyone was going home for the day or indulging in their various hobbies. Some were simply walking around the town, enjoying the ending of the day. Others just goofed around, acting all big and tough, annoying other people with their attitudes and recklessness. What did Ichigo do in his spare time? He spent it beating the crap out of the latter, of course. There were 5 people in front of him, 3 were cowering in fear, 1 was unconscious, the last was getting his head crushed into the pavement by Ichigo's foot. "Alright, listen up you trash," he growled out, pointing to a knocked-over broken bottle with some crushed flowers. "First question. What is that?" "Answer." "Oh, the middle nameless thug started. "I guess someone left those flowers for some kid that got killed here," he whimpered before getting a face full of Ichigo's heel. "Thankfully this is for comedic effect, so no one is dying." "Correct. Next question. Why is it on its side?" he said, glaring at the next 2 idiots. "It's because one of us was careless enough to knock it over," the next guy said, hoping to appease the angry seer of the dead. His response was another hard kick to the head, knocking him into the only other member of his group. "If you know that," he said, eerily calm before emitting a murderous aura, "then go apologize, or the next time the flowers will be for you," he growled, terrifying the group of thugs as they ran and screamed out their repentance. One bespectacled teen decided to reveal himself. "Was that necessary, Ichigo?" Yuryu asked as he went to where a young girl's soul still resided, replacing the flowers and offering a quick prayer. "Probably not," he admitted as he turned to his cousin and a little girl with a bloodied face. "But you know how protective I am. Besides, spirits like her deserve to rest in peace." She smiled and bowed to the 2 Quincy's. "Thank you, now I can rest in peace." The 2 smiled at the girl before walking away. It was one of those rare moments they could talk and catch up, not worry about the training Ryukin puts them through or the schooling to make sure they get that training. "Father says that Karen is getting better in her Quincy practice," Yuryu told him. The twins found out about their brother after following him to Urahara's one day. The exiled captain saw little harm in 2 sisters wanting to support their brother. "How's Yuzu's progress with Kido?" "You know, she's having trouble," he said. "Karen has no trouble, but it's harder for Yuzu. Maybe she just has no talent for it," Ichigo said apathetically. In reality he'd rather they not fight at all. He's fine with them learning to defend themselves but not go into a war like he and Yuryu were going to. "This coming from you?" Yuryu asked through a laugh. "You still have trouble with controlling your Ryatsu. You can barely use a Heido spell without blowing something up. An unfortunate incident where he caused some major property damage, causing him to swear to not use Kido outside of a safe environment. The only safe spells were still extremely powerful and dangerous ones, very taxing on his physical body. So, I'm stronger and faster than most everything in this city." He threw back. "So you can beat a captain of the Soul Society?" "Maybe, we'll find out soon." Ichigo looked off in the distance, feeling erasure he associates only with a few people he knows. There's finally a Shinigami in this city. This made the 2 stop. Yuryu glared in the distance, still feeling some level of resentment for his grandfather. Ichigo, more in annoyance that it took them this long to show up and help the lost souls of the city. "Do you think you'll finally unlock your Shinigami powers now?" "I won't force the issue, Yuryu. But I have a feeling that it might happen soon." They then went their separate ways, each feeling that there was nothing more to say to the other. The sun finished its descent as the light went from warm bronze to pale silver from the moon and streetlights. Minutes of walking later and Ichigo finally returned to his home, where his family waited with dinner. In most families you would hear, "I'm home," or "I'm back." In this house, shielded in a strong barrier to keep it hidden from unwanted eyes, Ichigo's first words to his family was, "Bakudu number 8, Seiki." He rose his arm, now with an orb of light hovering on his wrist, catching his father's swift kick and blowing him back. Ichigo immediately charged at his father, who recovered from the counter and began throwing fast punches at his son. At the table, eating that dinner Ichigo came home for, sat his twin sisters. One was as gentle as a blooming flower with hair much like her mother's, while her sister was more rough with black hair like her father. "Can't they wait until after dinner?" Yuzu whined, puffing her cheeks in displeasure as father and son fought. Leave them. Karen told her sister, holding her bowl out for more rice. Ichigo needs to be ready for anything. You know that. Doesn't mean I like it, Karen. She said, giving her sister another helping. The fight ended as soon as it began with a tie between father and son, each one at their physical limit. You're definitely getting better, my son. Isshin said, looking at his son with pride. He was glad that his son was already on par with most lieutenants, he just needed to become a Shinigami to confirm that. The two men of the house returned to the table to enjoy their family dinner. While they still missed Masaki's cooking, Yuzu was doing a fine job with it. Before they went to bed, Isshin told his son that Urahara wanted to see him tomorrow. That it was important. The next day, Ichigo was walking through the city, in his gray school uniform, to check up on the spirit of that girl from yesterday. That's when he heard the howling. Like a large beast crying out in hunger. He remembered those cries, the same beasts that tore his teacher apart so many years ago. He ran into the city to find them and the little girl they were chasing. The people were frantically running in terror, away from a danger that they could not see but certainly made its presence known. It was a giant brown bug-esque monster resembling a praying mantis. In front of it, running for her life, was the little girl's spirit from yesterday. Help me! She cried, fleeing for her soul. Ichigo reached out and grabbed her before skating away with his Hirenkyaku. He got them to the end of the sidewalk when he finally found that Shinigami he was sensing. She moved so gracefully, slashing through that hollow like a blade on the wind, killing her prey in 2 swings. Finally, a Soul Reaper shows up. He said, watching her as the hollow dissipated. She glanced at him, eyes wide in shock. Crap, she saw me do that. He thought to himself before disappearing from the scene. That boy. The Shinigami said as the target of her inquiry vanished from her sight. He looked so much like him and he was definitely no ordinary human. I'll have to find him. She began to leave to continue her duties. I have some questions for him. Later in the evening. Hey Kisuke. The young hybrid said as he entered the small sundry shop, punching Jinta in the head for tormenting Yururu again because she's so timid. I'm here. He walked down the center aisle of the small store, lines of nondescript and unimpressive products of random types waiting in the shelves and display boxes. It surprises him that Kisuke manages to keep this shop in business, probably not something he wanted to know the answer to. Maybe it had something to do with the real purpose of the shop, catering to the spirit beings. What did you want? He asked his disheveled teacher. Well, my prized pupil. The bucket-hatted scientist exclaimed excitedly, putting Ichigo on edge knowing his teacher's mad scientist habits. I have done all the calculations, all the experiment variables, tested in the only ways I had, don't ask, and finally. I feel confident enough to give you this. He threw a black soul candy ball, the same as a faux soul used by the Shinigami. Swallow that and it will separate you from your body. Kisuke said, being serious with his disciple. After that you have a window to awaken your latent Soul Reaper abilities, but it's going to be very risky. Ichigo looked at his master, who had no trace of his earlier comical demeanor. This method can only be done by someone like you and only you. He leaned in close to his student and told him what he had to do. That is going to hurt a lot. Ichigo said, somewhat worried about doing this and excited to finally have the rest of his powers awakened. He was about to leave before remembering that Soul Reaper from earlier. By the way, a Soul Reaper is in town. She may have also seen me using my Hyrankya dash. He tried to finish before getting attacked by the one person he still could not keep up with. Yoruchi was clawing at his face in her cat form while berating her student. What part of, be careful, keeps getting lost on you? She yelled as Ichigo pried her off his face. You know that you're under his observation. We can't let him know we know he's watching, and Soul Society is not that lenient with someone like you. You could be killed on the spot if they found out the full truth too early. The old man is willing to listen but only when someone proves themselves trustworthy. Kisuke said. Your best chance is most likely after Aizen's betrayal, if that happens. I'll keep that in mind. Ichigo said as he left his teachers and started his trek home. Back home for his dinner, soul candy in hand, and a sense that it will be used very soon. Kurosaki Clinic. Night time. He laid in his bed, staring at the small ball in his hand, reflecting on what he was told and what he was going to have to do. His sisters finishing up their chores while their dad was at a meeting with his uncle, learning about the new practices and method for doctors in the ever-expanding field of medicine and surgery. Hey! He called out to the only people with him. You think this is going to work? Next to him in a flowing tattered black cloak was the Quincy Zangetsu while his hollow Zangetsu was at the other end, a color negative of his human half. It should. Said the white Zangetsu. He never failed you before. But this could be dangerous for him and those around. The older Quincy said. You might want to make sure that your sisters are behind the barrier when you use it. The barrier, made by Kisuke and Tessai. Designed to shield the occupants from racial-based attacks and surveillance, but not keep spirits out. She's coming. Ichigo said as he felt that Soul Reaper from before coming by. The projections of his Zanpakuto disappeared back into their master, moments before she finally entered his room. What do you think you're doing? He growled at the black-clad woman, silence being her response. Hey! Didn't you hear me? He tried again, and again no answer as she seemed to scan the room. She stood there, in the middle of his room, searching, sensing, trying to find any trace of the remaining hollows. I feel it. She said to herself. She sensed a great energy, but it saturated a good portion of the area, leaving that sense useless. So intent on her mission, she didn't notice the young teen in the room. Or what he was about to do. Don't break into someone's room and ignore them. Ichigo yelled, slamming his foot into the short death god. She fell into an undignified heap as the hybrid continued to lecture her. I don't know how you were raised in Soul Society or care that you're a Soul Reaper, it's rude to just break into someone's room and ignore them while they're talking to you. The Shinigami wasn't listening, again, as she tried to understand what just happened to her. She was just kicked, she was seen, by a human. Yo, you can see me. She turned her head to look at the young man, then she recognized him. Wait, you're that boy from earlier. She remembered seeing him pull that young girl's soul away from that rampaging hollow, only to disappear before her eyes. How did you do that? She asked, getting up to her feet, barely reaching his chin. She began examining him, rudely grabbing his chin for a closer look. You certainly look human enough. Are you defective? Ichigo swatted her hand away and bonked her on the head. You are neither the sharpest sword nor a good people person, are you? He growled while the Shinigami was nursing a lump on her head. Now, who are you? You want to know? She asked, glaring at him in an attempt to regain some dignity. Very well, I'm a soul dash, she was interrupted as Ichigo hit her again. I asked who, not what. Pay attention. He lectured as the Soul Reaper was about to cry from the pain. I already know about Shinigami, hollows, and Soul Society. What I don't know is who you are. The Soul Reaper looked at him in surprise. Most humans shouldn't know anything about any of those. Now, will you please tell me your name? And my name is Rukia. Rukia Kuchiki. She told him. Nice to meet you, Rukia. He said, not even bothering with any formality. I'm Ichigo Kurosaki. For a second Rukia could swear she saw her old mentor again. The boy looked so much like him it was uncanny. Now, can you tell me why it took so long for a Soul Reaper to show up and help any of the souls here in town? Her response was unsheathing her blade and performing a konso on a nondescript soul next to him. The influx of spirits and hollows suddenly rose in this particular city. The soul vanished in a flash of light and turned into a black butterfly, flying away from the duo. When I got here I was searching for those hollows, but something is making it hard to sense them. Or someone. He said, sensing several hollows coming to his home. You probably noticed that I personally have some pretty abundant spirit energy. Those hollows are probably looking for me. He said, opening his window and letting the hungry wails echo into their ears. And they sound hungry. Then stay here. Rukia said, preparing herself for the coming challenge. It's my duty to purify these souls. Ichigo ignored her as he made his way for the door. Hey, wait. Ichigo did not stop, he couldn't. These things were going to become a danger to his family. He had to protect them. He will protect them. Yuzu, Karen. He called out to his sisters as he descended the stairs. I'm about to do something dangerous and stupid. I'd like a snack when I get back. He said as he walked out the door. Ichigo. Wait up, don't do this. Rukia called out as she chased after him. By Ichienai. By Shinigami-san. Yuzu called out, already thinking about what to make her brother. You think that Soul Reaper is going to move in now that she knows about Ichigo? Karen asked, channel surfing. The more the merrier, Karen. The more cheerful twin said. With Ichigo and Rukia. The duo exited into the darkness of the night, the moon and various streetlights exposing the 5 large beasts craving Ichigo's bountiful power. Different shaped heads, different colored bodies, different hulking beasts standing over their soon-to-be prey. Ichigo met their hungry gazes with a defiant scowl, a hand in his pocket rubbing his black soul candy. He figured now was the time to use it, and if anything was to happen. Well, he had Zangetsu for that. Rukia. He said, pulling the soul candy out. Watch my back. He swallowed the small black ball and felt his body and soul separate as he jumped at the first hollow in front of him. A large dark grayish one known as Fishbone D. Stop it, you fool. You'll get yourself killed. She called out to the foolhardy teen. The hollow slammed his fist into Ichigo's body and sent him into the middle of the others. Ichigo silently thanked his dad for the constant attacks, letting him deflect the blow enough to not hurt him, but get him right where he wanted to be. Ichigo. He heard her cry. She was scared for him, worried for him. This would be hard to explain to her. Zangetsu, he called out in his mind to his powers, help me through with this. His hands went to the chain bound to his chest and began to pull, trying to rip off his chain of fate. Everything around him went silent. He could no longer hear the howling of the beasts closing in on him, nor Rukia's frantic warnings that he was doomed. The seal came off his chest with frightful ease, and he was consumed in a whirlwind. Ichigo. Rukia cried out. She never saw anyone try to tear off their own chain of fate like he just did. He willingly turned into a hollow. To what end? What was he thinking? She didn't realize, watching that all-consuming whirlwind of dust and power, that the hollows that were attacking the boy had vanished. Completely gone with no trace. Rukia couldn't comprehend what she was watching. 1 second 4 hollows were about to devour that idiot brat she just met, then the next, they were just gone. All there was left was a crushing pressure, greater than any hollow she's ever seen. She dared to believe that it actually matched her brother's in power. So focused was Rukia that she didn't notice the fish-like hollow that attacked Ichigo creep up behind her, or that she was getting weaker by the second. The hollow was planning to devour the absent-minded Soul Reaper given that prime chance, but the whirlwind finally stopped, the dust was slowly settling, the hollow known as Fishbone D felt he was no longer a predator here, he was going to be the prey. In this dust, he saw a figure with a pair of glowing yellow eyes. The last thing he saw before a massive blade cleaved his skull. Well, Rukia heard from someone coming up behind her, looks like my boy's got this. She turned to see a man, similar to Ichigo with darker hair and a thin beard on his face. Ichigo moved from his position of his transformation to sink his massive katana into the hollow's skull. Come on inside and we'll discuss the living arrangements. Isshin said as he returned to his home, carrying his son's soulless body. You might be with us for a while. Ichigo finished killing the hollow and joined back up with Rukia. Who is that? She asked the hybrid. Shock still racked her being from what she just witnessed. First Ichigo was just another plus, ejected from his body. Next he tore off his own chain of fate and decimated 5 hollows with ease. What was with this family? What was with Ichigo? And she wasn't sure, but she could almost swear she saw him with a mask before attacking that last hollow. That is my father, the former captain of Squad 10. Ichigo said as he made his way back to his home and family. He'll fill you in. Adjusting. The next morning. They were walking, toward the building of social gathering and knowledge growth, with the events of last night playing fresh in their minds. Rukia could scarcely imagine the situation she ended up in. A former captain of the Godai 13, sacrificing his powers to save the life of a human woman, now a father of 3 with a son that showed immense promise as a soul reaper. However, for as glad as she was that she got some answers, she was now greatly resentful of the boy in front of her. How many decades of training did she have to do to even come close to how powerful this child is? And to make matters worse, he took some of her powers. Flashback of the previous night. So that's the story. Isshin said, finishing his tale of meeting a human named Masaki and becoming human to save her life. Partway through that explanation, Kisuke and Tessai showed up to examine Ichigo and prepare a jigai for Rukia. I couldn't return to Soul Society after that and they'd probably arrest me for giving up my powers like that. Change does not happen overnight for the living, and it takes much longer for the dead. Doesn't seem like Rukia can go back either. Said Kisuke, jotting some notes down about his students' changes. Looks like she lost a good chunk of her power when she got too close to Ichigo. He explained to them that the method Ichigo used would absorb nearby Reisha and Ryatsu if anything got too close to him. Rukia was lucky to just lose some of her power. As she is now, she is incapable of opening a Senkaman or activate her Shirkai. Present. Scowling at me like that isn't going to change the situation we're in, Rukia. The teen told her as she followed him to class. I already said I was going to help you with your duties, you have a place to stay, and when whoever comes I'll talk to them about what happened. Ichigo knew that talking was probably not going to work, but it was better than outright violence when himself and the captain commander had bigger things to worry about. You still got me into this mess. She yelled back, justifying her anger at the orange-haired teen. If you had just stayed back, I would have been able to kill those hollows and we wouldn't be stuck like this. She knew he meant well, that he was protecting his family first and foremost. But his actions put them both in danger for the long run. He's strong but he'll never be able to match the Soul Society. She thought to herself as they finally made it into the school grounds of Karakura High. He gave her the directions to the office so she could finalize her status as a student of Karakura. He left for his own reasons, running into a certain well-endowed girl with flower hairpins. Whoa! He said, wrapping his arms around her reflexively, keeping her from falling onto her butt. Hey there, Orihime. Their faces were inches apart, Ichigo wearing a mask of casual nonchalance while the busty girl quickly became a stuttering blushing mess. Ichigo. She never had enough courage to pursue her crush, though she is monumentally more comfortable around him now thanks to more than a few confidence boosts from her best friend. Yay! Go Orihime! A black spiky-haired tomboy cheered, trying to encourage her best friend, despite breaking the mood and causing the two to separate. Hey Tatsuki. Ichigo greeted his oldest friend. How's your training coming along? I wouldn't be surprised if I was the strongest girl in Japan after sensei by now. She responded with a smile. And her butt looks amazing. Said Ichigo's Zanpakuto. One with huge melons and another with a great butt, how have you not slept with either of them yet? Zangetsu, how many times have we talked about this? Ichigo asked his instinctual side. Every day you've seen either of them since you hit PBRTY. The more controlled half of the blade spirit said. I'm almost inclined to agree with the hollow if it means an end to this argument. The answer is still no. Ichigo stubbornly told his spirits. I have more important things to do than have SEC with my friends. Especially when they have no interest. Both spirits were in a stunned and irritated silence before Ichigo's hand suddenly shot out and grabbed Tatsuki's butt. Why? He asked just before he was sent flying with an insanely strong punch, sending him flying down the school hallway. Because you're an idiot. The spirit said before leaving Ichigo alone. You pervert. She yelled out, blushing furiously. Tatsuki never thought of herself as girlish, even when dealing with other perverts, and would be MLSTRS. She was more mad than embarrassed. With her childhood friend, it made her heart pound and her knees weak. She didn't think of him that way, but he keeps bringing out her more girlish side. Come on Orihime, let's get to class before we're late. She walked away quickly, trying to distance herself and Ichigo. Right. Orihime cheered, rushing after her friend. Bye Ichigo. See you in class. Bye. Ichigo responded after finally pulling himself up. Looks like it's going to be one of those days, isn't it? The day went by rather normally after that. Rukia introduced herself to his class, masquerading as gentle and sweet girl, immediately endearing herself to everyone else. After school was a single patrol, Rukia giving the cliff notes of the responsibilities of the Shinigami while Ichigo ignored them in favor of doing what he felt was right because it was right. The day was coming to its end when they heard the loud screeching of tires suddenly breaking. They turned to see Orihime, carrying a grocery bag with a man with dark hair in a blue suit holding her back. You need to be more careful Orihime, the man said with concern in his eyes, you almost got hit. Sorry Sora Nii-san. Orihime said with a sheepish smile, bonking herself on the head. I zoned out a bit. She giggled happily, making her brothers take a look of tired annoyance. What am I going to do with you? He sighed, patting his little sister on the head. At this rate, I'll need to be worried for the man that makes you his wife. Orihime's response was to puff her cheeks and pout at her brother. She growled. You're making fun of me. Trying to be intimidating to her brother but only coming off as a harmless kitten. Ichigo and Rukia finally caught up to the siblings. Yo! Sora, what's up? Ichigo asked the fellow older brother with Rukia close behind him, scrutinizing and studying the siblings. What's going on? Well, I was going to spend a nice dinner with my adorable ditzy sister, he said, rubbing the shy girl's head as she blushed while the brothers talked. But then Ryukin-sama called and said he needed me at the hospital. Sora was fuzzy on the details, but soon after the car accident and his recovery he came to work under Ryukin Ishida in a pretty good job. What Ichigo knew was that it involved Urahara and invasive experiments to make Sora knowledgeable on how to do that work and asking no questions. Not a proud or well-liked moment in their history. Do you mind walking my sister home? I'd feel safer if she was escorted. I can walk home by myself. She mumbled, secretly wishing that it would just be herself and Ichigo. Sure. He told the fellow older brother. Come on Rukia. Oh. Is this the Rukia Orihime has told me about? Sora finally noticed the silent Soul Reaper. Yes, she smiled innocently with a curtsy, pleased to meet you Mr. Inoue. Sora laughed harmlessly. Old-fashioned isn't she? He asked through his chuckles before returning the gesture with a small bow. The pleasure is mine Ms. Kuchiki. But alas, I must be off. Sora then began his trek toward the hospital, for whatever his boss has in mind for him to do. Have fun with your sleepover Orihime. He yelled before they were out of earshot. The three walked alone in silence, Ichigo's presence dissuading any would-be flirts while the girls were left alone for whatever topic came up. So, Rukia started, trying to think of any conversation piece to end the awkward silence. How did you first meet Ichigo? Orihime immediately had a set of emotions flash by on her face. Pained, sad, but slightly joyful at the end. Well, it happened a few years ago. She started. My brother got me these hairpins and I yelled at him for giving me such a childish thing. She pointed to the hairpins that allowed her hair to frame her face, then she got melancholic at the darker memories. He was hit by a car later that day. I was terrified to lose him and carried him to this nearby clinic, hoping for a miracle. They did manage to save my brother, but it was Ichigo that helped me the most. She gazed at the orange-haired boy ahead of them with a look of adoration. He gave me hope, belief that my brother would be okay. Her hands reached for her pins, memories of that night playing again and again in her mind, how she made a wish that came true. Rukia could only stare at the happily blushing girl as, yet again, she had to change her views on the young Soul Reaper. Strong and gentle, fierce and protective, powerful and kind. He reminded her so much on her now deceased mentor she could swear he was Kaion's reincarnation, like fate was giving her a chance to undo her past mistakes. Well, we're here. Ichigo announced as they came to the Inoue apartment. Have a nice day, Orihime. Thank you, Ichigo. She chirped with small bow, trying to hide her blushing face from her crush. She began to ascend the stairs to her home when Ichigo called out again. Hey, Sora said you're having a sleepover, right? He asked her. Why not have Rukia join? He was supposed to head back to the hospital as today was training with his cousin and uncle. He can't let Rukia follow him and learn about his Quincy heritage, who knows how she'll react. She doesn't have a lot of friends in town and you're a great person to help out with this. Rukia grabbed his arm and pulled him down to her level. Ichigo, what are you doing? She growled. I have to stay with you so you can be ready when we get our orders. You're forgetting that I can sense Ryatsu. He reminded the irate midget. Besides, if you're going to live in this world you need to learn how. Your feudal age customs aren't going to help you much here. Besides, it'd be weird if you only stayed around me. I don't need more unwanted rumors about me going around. He reasoned. He did still have a rep as a violent punk and he disappeared some days for hours to days. He still managed as one of the best students but they attributed that to studying with the smartest in school, maybe even forcing him to do his schoolwork. Rukia couldn't argue with his reasons as he began to leave. Have fun you too. He said before rounding a corner. Ichigo wait dash, she chased after him in a vain attempt to argue her way out of an awkward situation, but he was already gone. DMN it. Orihime just watched as the scene played out before her. This certainly was surprising, but she was always happy to make new friends and this was a request from Ichigo. Later that evening in the hospital basement. So you left the Soul Reaper with someone she doesn't know, in a place she's unfamiliar with people she doesn't know, with nothing but the clothes on her back. Yuryu asked his cousin while shooting at both him and the targets he's throwing while moving all around the room of silver and glass, hiding behind blocks and pillars to work on reaction and awareness. Is there any reason for this? He fired several spirit arrows at his cousin who managed to dodge and block them all with a pair of deep red rapier blades from black hilts. To get her off my back so I could get here. He kicked up several rings and targets of various sizes and shapes for the archer to shoot at flawlessly. Have to keep the Quincy thing a secret for now, right? He asked while cutting through more arrows. Hey Yuryu, you ever wonder what it would be like to be normal? We'd probably be bored out of our minds. With Orihime, Tatsuki, and Rukia. No offense Rukia, but it would have been better if you weren't there. Tatsuki said as they finished a cobbled-together dinner of leftovers and self-made desserts. They discussed what happened during the walk and the time up to the sleepover of getting to know each other. If they were alone, I'm sure Ichigo would have made a move on cute little Orihime. She always supported her best friend's crush, wanting to see her friend happier made her feel better as she pushed Orihime to be more aggressive when it came to the strawberry. I'm sure you would have come out of nowhere and ruined the moment, Tatsuki. Orihime sighed. What do you mean? The tomboy asked, ignorant of doing anything but being helpful to her friend. You always show up at the worst times and ruin the moment. She knows Tatsuki wants to help her, but she also knows that Tatsuki is unintentionally sabotaging her as well. Earlier today you did just that. And that's not even the first time. Well. Tatsuki thought back to every occasion that her friend was thinking of, which was a lot of times. Yeah, that's my bad. She said, deflated. But I just want to encourage Dash. Will you stop using that as an excuse and just admit it already? Orihime suddenly said, rather forcefully. Stop lying to yourself and admit it. You like Ichigo just as much as me. Now Tatsuki became a stuttering, blushing mess. What? She waved her hands in front of her, shaking them and doing everything to deny Orihime's claims. No. We're just childhood friends. There's no way I'd like that. Cry Dash. She stopped, remembering that Ichigo hasn't cried in years. That we Dash Ichigo was stronger than her, has been for years. That crude Dash, she knew Ichigo only retaliates or helps others, never doing anything to be a jackass. That. She knew she didn't have many bad things to say about him, if there was anyone she'd consider dating it was him. But for Orihime, she was willing to set her feelings aside for so long she forgot she had them. Tatsuki, you look at Ichigo the same way I do. Orihime said. Whenever they were around him Tatsuki was happier, just being herself around someone that made her feel comfortable in her own skin. No judgments, no crudeness, no lies or manipulations, they were free to be themselves around each other and be at ease. Tatsuki let her mask fall apart, she had nothing else to say, no excuse to say Orihime was wrong. Of course I like that idiot. She silently admitted. How could I not? He's strong, kind, always puts others before himself, treats me like a friend rather than a girl. She smiled warmly, remembering laughs, cheers, shared struggles, so many fond memories together. Just being friends was enough for her, but she couldn't deny what it would be like to be more girlish, being his girlfriend. But you liked him first, Orihime. You're my friend, so I'll back off. Why? Orihime asked, completely innocent. Why would you? I'm alright if you want to being his girlfriend. Orihime, I'm not becoming love rivals with you. Tatsuki told her. I won't let our friendship end because we're fighting for the same guy. Why do we need to be rivals? Orihime confused her friends. Does she even know what she's saying? I'm saying let's share Ichigo. Rukia and Tatsuki took a moment to glance at each other, trying to comprehend what Orihime just said. Ha. They looked back at Orihime with disbelief. Share Ichigo? Why not? Orihime said with a smile. You're my best friend. I can share Ichigo with you. She never dropped that smile, that innocent, happy smile. She's too innocent. The other two thought to themselves. Back with the boys. Yeah, I have no idea what we'd even talk about. Ichigo agreed with his cousin before a barrage of light arrows stormed down on the two boys. If you two have enough time to talk, you're not working hard enough. Ryukin said, glaring at the two with a silver short bow in his hand aimed at the two. Let's fix that. Kurosaki household. Inside the house, two sisters were setting up a room, moving furniture about while setting out clothes that they'd figure their guest would enjoy. Because father and son had no taste in womanly decor, the task fell to the Kurosaki twins, eager to help the family and its new guest as a way of apologizing for her situation. Hours passed and soon Ichigo returned home, with more than a few scratches and burns on his clothes to show that Ryukin was nowhere near as kind as his father. Looks good, you two, he announced, smiling at his cute sisters. Ichi ni. Yuzu rushed to her brother's side, hugging him tightly. Karen then stripped him of his top before Ichigo had any time to protest. You've been pushing yourself again. Look at all these injuries. Yuzu scolded before realizing her brother was physically fine. Yuzu, he said while patting his sister on her head, how many times do I have to tell you that I heal fast? Yuzu's response was to look up at her brother with teary puppy eyes. Is it wrong that I worry about you? You're fighting monsters, Ichi ni. But I'm stronger than them, so there's nothing to worry about. Karen then noticed an absence of another Shinigami. Hey! Where's Rukia? At Oriheim's, learning more about teenage girls. Instead of calming down, Yuzu became that much more worried. But what if another hollow attacks? She asked before a gray and red hollow phased through the wall and charged at the hybrid. In that same instant, Ichigo reached out and grabbed onto the goat's skull-shaped mask before crushing it in his hands, his veins glowing blue with his Ryatsu. Then that happens. Ichigo calmly assured his sisters. Nothing will hurt you while I'm here. He told them while wrapping his arms around them protectively. The promise of the shield. Late one night. 3 people gathered together near a construction site, 2 normal everyday teens and one of worthy note, sitting around a small bird cage housing a small yellow parakeet. The 2 others were discussing what to do with the helpless bird, one that was apparently cursed as every owner it had died, while the large half-Mexican watched the bird with a curious gaze. There's something odd about this bird. He thought to himself, sensing another presence nearby. Maybe Ichigo will know something. Hey Chad, one of the other kids said, why don't you take him? Isn't he cute? He teased the more spiritual aware man, hoping to pawn the possibility of the curse on someone else. Hey man, that's not fair, said the other while Chad heard a strange groaning. You know Chad's got a weakness for small animals. The bird began to freak out suddenly, causing Sato to look up and see a thick steel beam falling towards them. It was times like this that he was grateful for joining his orange-haired friend in his training. With the heightened physical abilities he gained through that intense training, he caught the falling metal with little trouble. Holding the mass of steel in his hands, resting on the top of his spine, he saw a shadowy figure quickly flee the scene. I recognize this aura, he thought to himself as he threw the steel beam away, feeling no strain from the normally demanding task. I definitely need to talk to Ichigo about this. Are you guys okay? He asked his 2 friends. Yeah. Are you fine, Chad? Thank you for saving me. The small bird said in a young childish voice. My name is Yuichi Shibata. What's your name, mister? Sato, Yasutora. He told the little parakeet, unsurprised by its display of intelligence. Maybe that Soul Reaper can help too, he thought before picking up the cage and leaving for his home. See you guys the next day at school. So how was your first outing as a normal girl? Ichigo asked Rukia. They were on the roof of the school for lunch, passing by the time by cloud watching in some light conversation. We talked, had dinner, and went to bed. She quickly responded, somewhat agitated. Nothing much. She didn't want to think about the night before, that she enjoyed herself more than she'd like. Obsessing over Oriheim's adorable plushies, hearing some of Ichigo's own embarrassing past as a crybaby. She had fun but at the cost of neglecting her duties, even if it was just for one night. She felt like she failed in a big way because of this. She did understand Ichigo's reasoning, but it still left a bad taste in her mouth. Here she was, a Shinigami many times Ichigo's age, one of the top of her class at the Shino Academy, someone that should not be having this much trouble, and she's just as helpless as she was back in the slums of the Rukon district. She can't even figure out how to drink her juice box. Here, watch, Ichigo said as he showed her what to do. There it was again, that feeling like a helpless child, but she didn't mind the teen, she liked and hated how much he was like her old mentor. It helped and it hurt. Hey Mizuiro. Ichigo greeted his black-haired friend. Looks like you 2 are together again. The named Mizuiro greeted. You 2 seem pretty chummy. I told you already. She's an old family friend that's staying with us for the time being. Their cover story, Rukia's family were close with Ichigo's and they used to spend time together. Seemed lazy and that no one would buy it, but they were dealing with teenagers and they usually don't care anyway. Do we look like we're chummy? Maybe. He responded with a blank expression. You do seem pretty close, and you're living together. People talk and fun rumors replace a boring truth. Ichigo. They might think you're an item. And when did I care about other people's opinion? He asked his ever-curious friend. Good point. He then turned to Rukia, who was contently watching them while sipping her drink. Hello, I'm Mizuiro Kojima. He greeted himself enthusiastically. My hobbies are dash. Womanizing. Ichigo finished for him, shocking his friend in embarrassment. Careful with him, Rukia, he's a big playboy. No, I'm not. I only go after older women. Mizuiro cried, not exactly helping his case. Like I said, Rukia, watch out. He said, confusing Mizuiro. That's when another of Ichigo's friends showed up. Looks like Chad still isn't here. A taller, lankier brown-haired individual noted as he got on the roof. Hey guys. He greeted his companions. Hey Kigo. Ichigo noted to his more enthusiastic friend. Then Kigo noticed the new cutie of the group. Oh. The hot new transfer student is here. How did this happen? Kigo asked in loud shock and surprise. Ichigo asked her out. Mizuiro said, trying to get a little payback on Ichigo. Ichigo. Kigo rushed to his best bud and gave a tearful congratulations. Good job. Welcome Rukia. To this garden of men. I'm Kigo Asano. He told Rukia, unknowingly making the girl uncomfortable. Now to celebrate with a lunch party. With sandwiches and juice. Mizuiro asked incredulously. It's not the food that makes a party, it's the mood. He declared before getting kicked in the back. Yo, Kurosaki. A random punk growled at the teen. He was accusing Ichigo of copying him and ignoring any claims otherwise. He was going to start a fight before getting blindsided by a giant fist. Hey Chad. Ichigo greeted his old friend. Did you remember to hold back? I did, but he's going to be unconscious for a while. He said while fishing out his own lunch. So what kept you? I was almost hit with a motorcycle. He explained. He fell off and slammed into a wall, passing out from the collision, so I carried him to the hospital. That explains why you were late. Kigo said. Chad then showed the bird cage he was carrying. What's with the bird? Hello, my name is Yuichi Shibata. The bird greeted. Ichigo and Rukia recognized that something was up almost immediately. What do you think, Ichigo? Chad asked his more learned friend. That bird is certainly possessed. Ichigo answered. Kigo and Mizuiro learned about Ichigo's spiritual awareness after a dare gone wrong one time and never doubted the existence of spirits since. Should be easy to fix. Bring him by later and we'll figure out what to do. Rukia looked at Ichigo with a sense of pride that he's growing into the role of a soul reaper so well. The lost soul of the child, however, did not look so pleased. In fact, it looked scared. Later that day at the Kurosaki clinic. Ichigo and Chad were helping to carry people from the streets and into the clinic. As they neared the Kurosaki home, they were almost crushed in a sudden car accident, bringing several more people into the mix. Karen and Yuzu frantically tried to get the injured the help they needed while Ishin was trying to get more cots and beds to house the influx of patients. This is becoming more of a headache than I would have liked. Ichigo growled as he and Chad brought in the last 4 people. We better get some answers about this now. Ichigo would have liked to help his family, but he did not have much in the way of human medicine and care. Even his healing Kido was pathetic compared to his sister Yuzu. All he could do was the heavy lifting grunt work and stay out of the way. Himself, Sato, and Rukia then went up to Ichigo's room with Yuichi in hand to ask him a few questions. No one noticed Karen's own shaken form as she watched them ascend the stairs. The barrier around the house seems different, Ichigo. Rukia noted as they walked into Ichigo's room. Did something happen? Yeah, there was a minor hollow attack, so Kisuke made it so hollows can't enter. Except for me, but that's just fine-tuning. Ichigo thought to himself as they set Yuichi down and sat around him. Now, what should we ask first? Why is that hollow chasing you? Chad said out of the blue, surprising Rukia and Yuichi. The small bird looked down in shame as he relayed his tale. How he was just a little kid, living alone with his mom, when somebody broke in and began to attack them with a knife. His mother died trying to protect him and he made the bad man fall to his own death. Some time passed after that he ended up in the body of that bird while a monster made a deal, that if he could run from him for 3 months he would bring back his mother. Ichigo was seething after hearing this story, so much so that his head was throbbing. Chad clenched his fists so hard his nails dug into his palms. Rukia looked sick to her stomach in rage and disgust. I'm sorry to say this, Yuichi, but that monster was lying to you. Rukia said, as gently as she possibly could given the situation. There is no coming back to life. Once you die you can't go back to the world of the living. Yuichi could only look downcast, feeling the last shred of hope fail. I know. He said, about to break into tears. In a way I already knew. I just wanted to see my mommy again. They watched the bird, seeing a silhouette of a small child, breaking down into tears with pity in their hearts. Chad rose to his feet and made his way to the door. Chad! Where are you going? Ichigo asked. He didn't need to, he knew his friend enough to know what he was thinking here. I'm going to find that hollow, and break him. He said very calmly, like a prelude to a storm. Rukia looked at him like he was insane. She was about to protest when Ichigo gave him the go-ahead. Okay. Save the finishing blow for me though. He said, causing everyone to look at him. I want to be there to watch him get dragged to hell. He grinned darkly, letting a little of his inner hollow out just enough to darken one of his eyes. Chad nodded in affirmation as he left to fight that monster. Ichigo, what are you thinking? Rukia cried. He's just a human. Rukia. He said firmly. Chad made his decision. He'll be fine. He told her, having full faith in his friend. Let's just perform the Konso. Rukia recognized that Ichigo wasn't going to budge and resigned herself, slipping on her soul ejection glove to bring out Ichigo's Shinigami form. With Chad. The streetlights and moon illuminated the city, giving a sense of eerie life and stillness to the city, direct contrast from the day. He was wandering the streets in a sleeveless gray shirt, proudly displaying his arms, waiting. Waiting for that monster to show up, waiting for his fight. You've certainly been a stubborn one, haven't you? He heard a warped voice speak, floating around him. Of all the people I've killed while chasing that brat, you've been the hardest one yet. You've got great reflexes and instincts, but I've grown weary of this. He kept talking while closing in on Sato, believing he couldn't see or hear him. You smell odd, but so tasty at the same time. He got too close and was met with a large fist hitting him like a freight train, causing a spiderweb fracture in his mask and flying backwards, tumbling to a stop. The way you're talking is annoying, said Chad, cool and collected as he glared at the bluish-green frog and a gray mane around his neck. And you've targeted the wrong prey, he said, cracking his knuckles while stalking toward his enemy. I'm the one that's going to make you pay for your crimes. You're no ordinary human. The hollow called Shrieker yelled out in shock that he was hit, and so hard too. You're not a soul reaper either, I'd recognize that scent. So what are you? Chad kept walking toward the downed hollow that was shaking in fear, completely unaware of the small creature surrounding him. To be honest, I don't really know myself. I'm not an ordinary human and I'm not a soul reaper. He saw Shrieker's expression change back to his previous cocky attitude. But you're still just as careless. He yelled in triumph as Chad got sprayed with slime and thick leeches. What the? Chad wondered in surprise as the fleshy worms latched onto him. Now die and feed me your soul. The murderer cried as he extended his tongue and acted on his name, covering the giant in explosions. With Rukia and Ichigo. The two Soul Reapers watched in their Shinigami forms, watching the confrontation between Ichigo's friend and the hollow he wanted to crush. They sent the young Yui Chi to the Soul Society after assuring him that Chad would be safe and that his mother would be waiting in Soul Society. Rukia was still concerned for the giant, and to simply calm her down, Ichigo followed his friend's ribbon just in time to watch Chad get consumed in fiery explosions. Sado! Rukia cried out as she tried to rush toward Chad, only to be held back by Ichigo. "What are you doing, you fool? He's going to get himself killed." "Rukia," Ichigo said while keeping his attention on his friend, "we're staying out of this because Chad's my friend." He felt the air change as the hollow's doom was closing in. Besides, a blast of light and power shot out from the dust cloud that enveloped Chad. "Chad's more powerful than you think. Back with Chad." Shrieker could only gape as his left arm was obliterated by whatever that blast was. The dust slowly settled, revealing Chad, only slightly burned and bloodied, with an entirely new right arm. Wings on the sides of his wrist and a protrusion at the end of his shoulder, black with a magenta stripe going down the middle outlined in white. This new development froze Shrieker so badly that he didn't react when Chad rushed him. "I was careless," he admitted, shoving his fist into the hollow's mouth. "But so were you." He pulled out the monster's forked tongue before delivering a brutal uppercut, making the killer bite off his own tongue and fly into the air. When he came back down, Sado proceeded to stomp the arrogant hollow underfoot. Ichigo decided it was his turn, and there was something he wanted to try. "All right, Chad, that's enough for you," he said, dropping down to his friend. Chad looked over to his longtime friend and ceased his actions, leaving a bloodied and broken monster. Besides, now Rukia's curious about that arm of yours. He saw the smaller of the two Soul Reapers scanning him, studying him. "All right," he replied, letting his right arm shift back to normal and gesturing for Rukia to follow him before leaving. "You must be pretty pathetic." Ichigo heard the hollow at his feet groan. "Having someone else fight your battles, do your job as the Shinigami." Shrieker attempted to cackle, refusing to die without some victory, any victory. His only hope for that was humiliating the Soul Reaper before him. Ichigo grabbed the near-dead hollow by the fur of his mane and threw him upright against a wall. "To most it would seem like that," he told the killer. "But we learned the story about you and that boy Yuichi Shibata." Ichigo unsheathed his massive blade and stabbed into the hole on the hollow's chest, the blade facing upward. "You put my friend in a very rare mood. Chad doesn't get mad easily, and you set me off a little too." Shrieker watched helplessly, feeling an odd sense of dread falling over him. "So we agreed that he would beat the crap out of you, leaving you helpless for me to, well, test something out." Shrieker felt the energy around the young Shinigami change, getting darker and darker, until he recognized the feeling. "Fear. Tell me. How does fear taste?" Ichigo asked in a warped voice behind a mask. The air was filled with the sounds of sickening crunches, with screams of terror and agony. With Chad and Rukia. The two were quite the distance away and so focused on their conversation that the sounds behind them was little more than background noise. "So, what's with that arm of yours?" Rukia asked, curiously touching and examining the giant's right arm. "To be honest, we don't really know ourselves," Sado replied, looking down at it himself. "One day a hollow attacked myself and Ichigo during Hakuta practice in some random field, and it appeared while we were fighting." Chad told her about the pact between himself and Ichigo, how they swore to watch the others back and fight for their sake. How he was pulled into similar training Ichigo was doing. He remembered that day in particular, when his first hollow fight happened. Flashback, last year before high school. Ichigo and Sado were sparring against each other, exchanging quick and heavy blows on the other, a film of sweat covering the two combatants as they struggled against the other. The sun was setting as their fight spanned for hours, with Ichigo slowly getting a lead on his friend. That's when it first showed up. Sado could barely see the monster, a hazy distortion in the air, while it was clear as day for Ichigo. A large drider with 4 arms that was yellow and green with an upside-down mask. It aimed to crush them at the same time, but the two separated as the beast struck. Chad! Run! Ichigo called out, dodging another sweep from the hollow as it tried to grab him. Chad dodged as well, barely seeing the attack coming. Ichigo, what is that thing? He asked, barely able to keep his calm. It's called a hollow. He told his friend, the need of secrecy gone in favor of survival. A corrupted soul that feeds on other souls to ease their eternal hunger. He dove under another to get in enough to kick the large beast in the neck. The hollow staggered from the spiritually enhanced kick, but not enough to completely stop it. The hollow managed to reach out and grab Ichigo while he was still in midair. Chad watched his friend being suspended helplessly in the air and instantly remembered his promise. He ran at the beast with newfound strength and speed and broke the hollow's elbow, making it drop his friend. Are you alright? He hastily asked as he helped Ichigo up. I'm fine. I thought I told you to run. Sorry Ichigo, I can't do that. He got into his fighting stance as he stared down the hollow. I watch your back and you watch mine. Remember? Ichigo could only shake his head and smirk at his friend's response. Right. I'll handle the top half, you mess with his legs. Ichigo said before disappearing and delivering kick to the hollow's chest, just above the hole. Got it. Chad managed to keep his focus and charged at the spider half of the corrupt soul and started punching the legs out from under it while Ichigo kept flashing around its arms. As the beast stumbled on top of Chad, Ichigo flashed to the back of its neck and got ready to throw it over his shoulder as Chad punched the beast over top himself. The hollow lay stunned as the duo prepared for the next strike. Let's go! Ichigo yelled as they ran toward the downed hollow, red energy gathering in his fist as he prepared his finishing blow. Right. Chad followed suit, finally seeing the monster before him in all its horror, as did the same unconsciously. With a roar of triumph they slammed their fists into the now obliterated corrupt soul in a torrent of energy. So that's what a hollow looks like. Weird. They finally relaxed in their victory, ready to collapse. Yeah, nasty. He said before realizing Chad's arm changed. What happened to your arm? Chad finally noticed his arm changed forms. I don't know. They looked at each other for a few seconds before they decided to ask Urahara. Present day with Chad and Rukia. Not even Urahara knows what it is for sure. Chad told her as he finished his story. At that same time beam of light shot up as a large pair of doors with half a skeleton each on their faces. The door of hell. Rukia told Chad as she watched the gates open to welcome its new victim. That monster is getting his just punishment for his crimes. They heard the demented laughter as the hollow was ran through on a giant blade, curiously missing more of his body, as the former serial killer was dragged into the burning abyss. Ichigo finally came by after the deed. I'm going to bed. This is enough for one day. Before making his way home, Chad said his goodbyes as well while Rukia joined Ichigo. Asking out Urahara's shop. It was the next day, another day of living a human life in a world she had no place residing in. However, with her only link to her home of soul society being the orders she is given, she still had to make do with supplies.